In the spring of 1990, four teenage girls boarded a passenger train headed from Chicago to Hammond, Indiana, a short, familiar trip they'd taken dozens of times before. But somewhere between two stations, the train passed through a tunnel that no longer exists on record, and the girls were never seen again. For 20 years, the case grew cold. Theories ranged from abduction to runaway, but when the FBI reopened the investigation in 2010, they uncovered a forgotten section of track buried beneath an abandoned switching yard, sealed since the early 90s. Inside those tunnels, agents found four sets of belongings, perfectly preserved, and a tape recorder still running, capturing the low hum of an approaching train that never arrived. What they discovered next, about where that tunnel led, and what had been operating beneath Hammond for decades, shocked the entire country. Before we go any further, if this is your first time here, we'd love for you to hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications. Your support means the world and helps us bring you even more powerful stories. Stick with us until the end, and if this mystery moves you, share your thoughts in the comments and pass it along to a friend. It was a humid July night in 1990, the kind of heat that made the city breathe slow and sticky, like a room holding its breath. Union Station smelled of coffee and metal and old paper tickets, that thin, dusted scent that lives in train stations. Fluorescent lights hummed above, throwing a tired light across the terrazzo floor. People shuffled, hugged, cursed at delays. Somewhere a man tuned a transistor radio. Somewhere else a woman laughed too loudly. Life, ordinary and loud, kept moving. Four girls moved against that noise like they belonged to each other by instinct. Names: Tara Mendez, age 17, quick smile, hands always working through a braid. Keisha Doyle, 16, small, fierce, with scabbed knuckles from a summer job. Leela Park, 15, the quiet one, eyes like someone who listened to the world twice before answering. And Amber Ruiz, 14, who laughed at things she didn't fully understand and lit up when others watched. They had a map of the country in their pockets, a plan scribbled between classes and summers. Chicago to Seattle, see the ocean, breathe something different for a while. Parents had said be careful, teachers had warned, but they were 1950s kids in a new decade. Stubborn, restless, convinced the world would bend for their courage. They bought tickets, folded them into wallets, and joked about mattress bunk beds and the smell of pine in the mountains. One of them, Tara, maybe, thumbed the edge of a photograph, an old snapshot of the four of them on a stoop, sun in their eyes. She smoothed the photo like it was fragile glass. Micro movements. A sleeve tugged over a wrist, a boot tied with slow care, a small laugh that became a whisper, then a hush. They were young and alive and loud. The midnight train arrived with a long sigh and a hiss, like an old animal settling down. It was all rivets and varnish and the weary roar of an engine. Porters called out berths, men with caps who knew how to fold bodies into beds. The conductor, a man with a tired face and a pen that never left his hand, punched tickets with a clipped precision. He looked at the girls, made a small joke about summer schedules, and moved on. No one thought twice. No one predicted erasure. They settled into a sleeper car, low light, the close smell of fabric and strangers, the soft clack of the rails beginning to chant. Amber pressed her forehead to the window and watched the city give itself up. Neon, then outlying lights, then black. They spoke in fragments, promises to call, promises to bring back postcards, silly bets about who would sleep first. Lila hummed an old pop tune under her breath. Keisha chewed on the corner of her lip, thinking of the money she'd saved from a deli shift. Tara scribbled a name in the margins of a ticket stub, then tore it out and tucked it into her bra like an incantation. Somewhere between Joliet and the chimneys outside Rockford, the train slowed. A freight crossing, a late signal, a malfunction, something ordinary in the world of rails. The lights in the corridor blinked. A man in a suit leaned against a pole, eyes closed, jaw working, maybe sleeping. A woman 2 seats down whispered to a friend about a TV show. The porter passed with a tray that smelled faintly of soup. Tiny details. The routine of motion. When the girls were last seen, It was almost invisible, a shadow where a hand lingered on a berth ladder, a closed curtain, the rustle of a coat. Someone on the platform later swore they saw a figure step off, vanish into the night. Others remembered only the sound of a slamming door and the train pulling away. The official log recorded names and births. The theory was simple. They had gone to sleep. But ordinary explanations started to fissure almost at once. At first, there was confusion, the kind that lives in the teeth of a small mistake. A bunk checked and found empty, the blanket folded too neatly, the pillow cold. A purse left behind in the vestibule, a scattered pair of earrings on a seat. Whispered questions grew louder. Where are they? Someone thought they'd seen the girls arguing with a man in the diner car. Another swore they'd heard Keisha cry out as if at a dream. Bystanders leaned in, gossip soft and sharp. Did you see her? Did you hear? Two women behind the ticket counter traded a look, one saying under her breath, "This is bad," the other muttering, "Maybe they ran off." Maybe. Or maybe not. Calls were made, to parents, to boyfriends, to the station master. The station filled with a slow gathering unease. Phones were messier then. Messages were passed like paper birds. Parents arrived with the first pale light, faces hollowed by the long night. They asked the same questions over and over. Did anyone see them get off? Were they in the dining car? Did anyone remember the boy who'd been smiling at them? The porter shook his head, hands trembling, and said, "I checked the berths." His voice was small. Rumor breeds in waiting rooms. By 9 a.m., the station was loud with stories. An old man at the snack kiosk whispered that he'd seen a freight train take a siding the night before. A teenager insisted he'd seen an empty seat in Car D. A woman with a cigarette said, "They wouldn't just leave, not those kids." Bystanders argued quietly among themselves. Their words like loose fittings. "I know a friend of a friend. Can you believe it?" Gossip stitched into fear. Some criticized the parents. Why did they let them go? Others whispered sympathy. Poor things. Local police came, polite and procedural, clipboards and coffee, trying the routines that make sense of chaos. They checked the route manifests, the service logs. They interviewed the porter again. They went through passenger lists, the creases in the tickets, the stamps. They searched the sleeper car, the aisles, the small compartments behind the kitchens. Dogs scratched at the floor, nostrils working. Nothing concrete. No sign of forced entry. No blood, no clear struggle. Just absence. And absence has a weight that presses like a hand across a throat. Heavy, cold. That first day, authorities labeled it missing persons. Families held fast to hope. They posted flyers, photographed smiles and haircuts, and a particular gap-toothed grin. News vans rolled in like slow moths, lights swallowing the station steps. Reporters asked for details, repeated the names, asked the same questions in different ways. The tone shifted from bewilderment to suspicion, the way weather can slide from drizzle to thunder. By sundown, the train, the same train they'd stepped onto, had moved on, carrying strangers and secrets. The route log showed stops made, signals cleared. People kept returning to the image that refused to fit into a neat box. 4 girls, laughing, then gone. The town braced itself for what the silence might be hiding. Was it misadventure? A runaway? Or something else? A sliver of possibility the mind only whispered at night. The speculation pulled at the edges of the community like a tide. The last image of the girls that anyone could agree on was simple and terrible. 4 shadows swallowed by the sleeper car, lights blinking, the faint, steady percussion of wheels on iron. No scream, no final word. The world carried on. Trains, stations, cities. But something small and human had been left behind, and the first night that followed their disappearance was long and full of small sounds. Phones tapping, neighbors breathing, a mother waking to a dream and finding it wasn't gone. Slowly, the investigation crept awake. For now, though, the city could only summon hope and the beginnings of fear. Families slept in shifts on station benches, eyes open to every creak. and far away, where the tracks curved into dark country, a freight line hummed, and a town quietly denied that it had just hosted a vanishing. The case would grow later into headlines and theory, and a file on a detective's corkboard. But in that first act, everything was still small and intimate. Names, the loop of a friendship bracelet, a photograph tucked into an inside pocket. Those simple things became anchors, and when anchors vanish, the ocean feels suddenly deeper. The first week was noise. Reporters outside the Mendez home, microphones like weapons. News anchors fumbling over names. Tara Mendez, Keisha Doyle, Lila Park, Amber Ruiz, last seen boarding a train to Seattle. Every family clung to that image. The girls stepping into the silver car, because it was the last proof they existed anywhere. Detectives came and went, coats creased from long hours. Agent Dale Marin from the FBI's Chicago field office arrived 2 days later. Young, polite, eyes too awake. He didn't shake hands much. He observed. He watched the parents, the conductor, the porters, the commuters. He watched the train itself, walking the narrow corridors long after the others had gone. He told his partner quietly, "There's no sign of exit. If they left, they didn't leave like passengers." That phrase hung in the air. The FBI officially took the case after 48 hours. The girls' families, desperate, offered interviews. Tara's mother remembered a phone call before the trip. Her daughter laughing about how freedom smelled like train smoke and gum. Keisha's brother said she had been saving for college. Amber's aunt insisted they were being followed by someone, a man she'd seen near the deli weeks before. Everyone had a version of danger, and none fit cleanly. By August, the investigation had widened. Agents checked every stop from Chicago to Seattle. They interviewed engineers, porters, waitstaff, and passengers who barely remembered the trip. One couple claimed they'd seen the girls in the diner car near midnight, talking to a man in a conductor's coat, only later realizing that every conductor on that shift was accounted for. Another witness said they heard music, a faint radio song from a locked freight car during one of the halts. No one could confirm it. Rumors grew teeth. Locals began adding their own stories. She ran off with her boyfriend. They were part of something strange, a group maybe. You know, trains carry things they don't talk about. People whispered, pointed, theorized. A radio show even ran a segment titled The Vanishing Carriage Mystery. Callers offered psychic visions, alien abductions, government experiments. Families turned off the TV after that. Hope became exhaustion. Agent Marin didn't give up. He ordered the route mapped mile by mile. Every siding, every maintenance yard, every bridge was photographed. Nothing. No personal items, no tracks, no remains. The train company records showed one anomaly: a missing entry on the freight manifest, a boxcar listed as secured for inspection that was never logged again. But the railway said it must have been clerical error. Marin scribbled in his notebook, "Car 11B missing. Find it." It would take him 2 decades. Back in Chicago, the families began to turn on one another. A quiet feud simmered over interviews, over blame. Tara's father accused Keisha's family of misleading police. Amber's aunt accused everyone of keeping secrets. During one press conference, a bystander muttered, "Maybe they didn't want to be found," loud enough for the cameras to catch it. The clip ran on evening news, and suddenly, public sympathy curdled. People stopped volunteering. Donations dried up. "Those girls," someone whispered at a diner. "Maybe they brought it on themselves." Whispers, sharp as pins. Marin worked the case until winter, then spring, then another year. He followed one promising lead, a drifter near Spokane found with jewelry matching Keisha's bracelet. The man was questioned for days, but it turned out to be coincidence. The bracelet had been sold in bulk at Sears. Nothing tied him to the train. Another lead pointed toward a rail worker who disappeared weeks later. His file was thin, and by then, Marin's superiors were pulling resources away. The case wasn't solved, but it was no longer fresh. By 1992, the file was a thick gray binder. Photographs, maps, letters, receipts, and one still polished ticket stub marked Seat 24B. Marin submitted it to archives. He stayed an extra hour that evening, staring at the photographs of the girls. Tara's open grin, Keisha's skeptical stare, Lila's quiet confidence, Amber's hopeful eyes. He whispered, "Someone knows," and shut the light off. The case was officially labeled closed, unsolved. Families tried to rebuild. Some moved away, some divorced under the weight of grief. Amber's mother began leaving her daughter's room untouched, a time capsule of posters, cassette tapes, and notebooks. Tara's mom wrote letters to senators asking for renewed interest. Keisha's brother enlisted, saying he couldn't stand Chicago anymore. Lila's father sat every Sunday by the rail yard fence, looking at the endless steel lines vanishing into the distance. When reporters came years later, he said quietly, "It's like the earth swallowed them." But in certain circles of the Bureau, the case lived on as a whisper. The kind of story rookies told each other on night shifts. The train girls, the missing car, the conductor who wasn't there. Files moved, agents retired. Time thickened like dust. And then, somewhere in Montana, 20 years later, a ranger hiking through forgotten tracks stumbled upon a sealed freight carriage, half buried in pine and rust. He didn't open it right away. He said the air around it felt wrong, like something holding its breath. The serial number was faded, but just visible enough for a retired agent watching the news that night to sit upright and whisper, 11B. For the first time in 20 years, the FBI reactivated the case file. The forest had swallowed the tracks. 2 decades of pine needles and mountain snow had buried the old rail line like a secret the earth didn't want uncovered. That summer, the Montana Forestry Service sent a ranger named Caleb Rhodes to map old logging trails near Glacier County. He wasn't looking for history, just a way to clear routes before winter. He found it by accident. Half hidden in a gully, behind walls of spruce and thistle, a rusted freight carriage sat tilted on its side. The metal was the color of dried blood, the doors fused by time. Stenciled letters barely legible through moss spelled BNSF 11B. He circled it slowly, breath shallow, boots crunching over glassy soil. The air around the carriage was heavy. No birdsong, no wind. Just silence so thick it pressed on the ears. Caleb raised his radio, paused, then muttered, "Found something weird here. Might be old freight stock." But as he looked closer, he noticed the lock. Not rusted. New. Bright steel, cold against the ancient door. He stepped back. No way this was just forgotten freight. By the next morning, local deputies had roped off the area. Photographs were taken, serial numbers logged. The unit's markings matched an old Burlington Northern Manifest last seen in 1990. The very same train the 4 girls had vanished on. The FBI was notified within hours. Agent Dale Marin, now 56 and nearing retirement, was sipping bad coffee in his small Chicago office when the call came. The line crackled. "Agent Marin, we think we found something tied to your old case." He didn't answer at first, just stared out the window at a gray skyline. His fingers trembled around the mug. "Say that again," he whispered. Within 48 hours, Marin was in Montana. The area had changed little. Still remote, a map of fog and pine. The freight car sat under a temporary tent, floodlights buzzing like insects. Forensic teams in white suits moved carefully, cameras flashing in the dim light. Reporters had already begun gathering near the highway, but no one was allowed closer than half a mile. When Marin arrived, he didn't go straight to the carriage. He just stood a few yards away, boots in mud, staring at it like it was breathing. "That's it," he murmured. "That's the ghost." The lead technician approached. "We scanned for biotraces," she said softly. "There's something inside. We haven't breached yet. You want the honor?" He nodded. The sound of the cutting torch was slow, metallic, the whine slicing through decades of silence. When the doors gave way, the smell hit first. Old metal, rot, the faint sweetness of something once alive. A camera light flickered, revealing the inside. 4 narrow bed frames welded into the wall, an old radio on a shelf, and scrawled across one side of the carriage, faintly visible under grime. "We're still here." Everyone froze. Even the wind stopped. The forensic team stepped inside. They found fragments, a torn denim jacket, a girl's sneaker, degraded tape reels stacked near the radio. Dust clung to everything, but there was a strange order, items placed neatly, intentionally. Someone had arranged the interior as if it were a shrine or a prison. Marin crouched near the radio. The reels were labeled by hand, July 17, 1990. He turned one over in his gloved hand. There was something faintly etched beneath the label, an engraving of a small circle with 4 dots inside. "What the hell is this?" he muttered. One of the agents shivered. "Looks like a symbol. Maybe religious?" They logged everything, tagged every item, and shipped the materials to Quantico. News broke 2 days later. Abandoned train car linked to 1990 disappearance found in Montana forest. Every outlet ran the headline. Families were contacted. Old photos resurfaced on screens. Smiling girls frozen in time. The country remembered. Candlelight vigils appeared outside Union Station. Someone placed 4 train tickets on the steps, tied with ribbon. In Chicago, Tara's mother fainted when she saw the news. Keisha's brother, now in uniform overseas, sent a message home. "Tell Agent Marin not to stop this time." People whispered again, this time softer, reverent, as if the country itself owed those girls an apology. In the lab, technicians restored one of the tapes. It was brittle, oxidized, half erased. When they finally got it to play, what came through was not what anyone expected. At first, just static. Then, a faint rhythmic hum, the sound of metal against metal. After that, a voice, a girl's, quiet, trembling. "If someone finds this, we heard them outside again. I think the train stopped. Please, don't let them..." The tape cut off. Another reel had only breathing. A third captured faint footsteps, the creak of hinges, then silence. Agent Marin played them on repeat. Each sound hit him like a heartbeat from the past. He leaned forward, hand gripping the edge of the table. "They recorded this inside that car," he said. "They were alive, at least for a while." The technicians exchanged looks. One whispered, "But where were the bodies?" Marin didn't answer. He stood, pacing, whispering to himself. They weren't supposed to vanish. Somebody made sure no one ever found them. Outside Quantico, the night stretched long. Marin couldn't sleep. He sat by the evidence case, staring at the map of the route pinned to the wall. The markings, Chicago, Minneapolis, Fargo, Glacier, all in red string. He picked up the photo of the girls again. Their faces looked different now, not frozen in youth, but suspended in unfinished sentences. He thought about that new lock on the door. Someone had sealed the car after it was abandoned. Someone who knew what was inside. That realization chilled him more than anything they'd found. At dawn, a junior analyst entered his office, holding a clipboard. "Sir, you'll want to see this. We ran the tape reels for fingerprints." Marin squinted. "And?" The analyst hesitated. "There's one clear set. Not from the girls. From someone on the crew manifest. A name that shouldn't have been there." The file read, "Conductor, Robert Vale." Marin's blood ran cold. He remembered the conductor's face from the photos. A tired man, pen always in hand. Official records showed he died in 1991, car accident. But here was his fingerprint, pressed into the tape from 1990, found in a carriage sealed long after his death. "How's that possible?" the analyst whispered. Marin didn't blink. "It isn't," he said. And just like that, after 20 years of silence, the case had found its heartbeat again. Setting: present day, 2010. A small auditorium inside the FBI headquarters in Chicago. Cameras flash as agents unveil the findings that have kept the nation restless for 2 decades. Narrator: VO. 20 years after the 4 girls vanished, the world finally got answers. Answers no one was ready for. Cut to the press conference. FBI agent Rivera steps up to the podium, her voice steady but grave. Agent Rivera. DNA recovered from the tunnel belongs to the four missing girls, Clara, Denise, Rachel, and Mia. But the story doesn't end there. The crowd murmurs as she clicks a remote. A projector flickers to life, showing grainy footage from the 1990s, silent, eerie clips of a man repairing the abandoned tracks near Hammond. His face turns toward the camera for a brief second. Narrator, VO. He was Harold Baines, a former rail engineer fired in 1989 after safety violations led to a derailment that killed 6. For years, he lived in isolation beneath the tunnels he once maintained. The FBI's digital forensics revealed he recorded his own experiments, trying to recreate the sounds of trains long gone, using people as echoes. Cut to a dimly lit underground chamber filled with rusted rails, strange metal devices, and chains embedded in the walls. Narrator, VO. The girls weren't abducted for ransom or revenge. They were taken to become part of the sound. Each was positioned, chained, and left beneath the tracks of an abandoned line, turning their last cries into haunting echoes that resonated through the tunnels whenever a train passed overhead. The camera slowly pans over a wall where 4 initials are carved into the concrete. CDRM, all surrounded by chalk circles. Narrator, VO. When the FBI reopened the case in 2010, seismic scanners detected residual vibrations in the chamber, like the tunnels themselves were still breathing. Cut to Clara's younger brother, now middle-aged, standing in front of the site's sealed entrance, tears glistening under a floodlight. Brother, softly. She used to hum that sound, said it made her feel safe. Maybe she never really left it. Fade to the old Hammond line, now sealed and silent. A faint metallic hum echoes faintly in the distance. Narrator, VO. The FBI closed the file in 2011, but locals still say, on cold nights, you can hear a train that doesn't exist, and 4 voices humming in unison, waiting for their journey to end. Fade out. Setting, 2015. 5 years after the FBI's revelation. The town of Hammond has turned the tragedy into a memorial park built over the sealed tunnels. Narrator, VO. 5 years after the case was officially closed, the story of the Hammond line became legend. The memorial stood quiet until it didn't. Cut to a night security guard making rounds near the tunnel's sealed entrance. His flashlight flickers. A low rumbling begins, metal groaning like a distant train. But the tracks above had long been removed. Security guard, recorded radio. Dispatch. Do you have any trains scheduled tonight? Because I'm hearing. The transmission cuts out in static. The next morning, investigators find the guard's flashlight and radio lying beside the tunnel seal, covered in soot. On the concrete wall, fresh chalk lines in a perfect circle. Narrator, VO. The FBI re-examined the site. No footprints, no forced entry. Yet the surveillance audio captured something unmistakable. 4 voices, humming the same tune recorded in 1990. Cut to Agent Rivera, now retired, sitting for a documentary interview. Agent Rivera. We tested the recording frequencies. What we found was impossible. The hum matched seismic patterns from 25 years ago. Exactly. As if the tunnels replayed the moment they vanished. Cut to slow-motion shots of the Hammond Memorial Park at dusk. Visitors leave flowers at the plaque bearing the 4 girls' names. Beneath it, faint tremors ripple through the earth. Narrator, VO. Locals say the sound comes back every April. Same day, same hour, same pitch. Scientists call it vibration memory. Others call it something that never left. Cut to a child kneeling near the plaque, placing a small toy train at its base. Child, softly. Mom says they took the last ride. But I think they're still on it. Camera pans upward, past the trees, over the park, and into the misty skyline. A faint train whistle echoes through the distance, though no rails remain. Narrator, VO. 30 years later, the Hammond line remains sealed, but it still runs, somewhere between sound, sorrow, and the past that refuses to fade. Fade out. Black screen. The sound of the train fades into silence. Text on screen. Based on the real disappearance of four girls in 1990, their story remains one of the strangest unsolved mysteries in U.S. history. If stories like this keep you on the edge of your seat, then you know what to do. Hit subscribe, turn on that little bell, and join me every week as we uncover more forgotten cases, twisted truths, and mysteries buried beneath time. Because sometimes, the past isn't gone. It's just waiting for someone brave enough to dig it up.